We've now entered day 9 of Diddy's trial, and inside a jam-packed Manhattan courtroom, things have taken a shocking turn. What was already one of the most talked-about scandals in the music world suddenly escalated in a way nobody could have imagined. Courtroom had already heard testimonies from huge stars. Cassie, Will Smith, and Monique had all taken the stand. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, IceCube stepped into the room, and the atmosphere changed instantly. He didn't enter with flash or noise. No media attention, no attempt to grab headlines. He moved with quiet determination. In his hands was a folder, and within that folder were documents, names, audio files, and notes that froze the entire room. Everyone could feel that something major had shifted. This was no longer just about Diddy. What IceCube was revealing pointed toward a deeper, darker machinery, one built not just to protect power but to maintain it with brutal precision. A machinery designed to crush dissent and reward submission. This wasn't a battle over wealth or stardom. It was about domination, about staying in line or vanishing completely. For years, whispers surrounded certain people: Jamie Foxx, Oprah Winfrey, Quincy Jones, but now the whispers were turning into evidence. And the man bringing it forward was none other than Cube. Journalists barely had a second to react. Cameras flashed. Papers rustled. Diddy's legal team tried to keep their cool. And then it happened. The courtroom doors flew open again. IceCube walked in with his eyes straight ahead, like he'd been building toward this very moment for years. Tension was immediate. Jurors sat upright, their focus sharpened. Even the judge was visibly taken aback. Diddy looked up, and when he realized who had entered, his entire expression changed. Cube didn't wait for permission. He said, "I wasn't invited. I came here because I had to." The judge gave him a small nod. That was all he needed. Cube began speaking, not like a celebrity, not like the actor or rapper fans were used to. He sounded like a man carrying a burden he could no longer keep to himself. Looking straight at the jury, he declared, "Most of y'all never knew I wasn't part of their circle. That's what made me a threat." You could hear a pin drop. What he shared next didn't just shock, it peeled back the curtain on decades of control. Cube started talking about the club, a silent, secret group in the entertainment world that doesn't speak its name but everyone knows exists. They smile for cameras, throw elite parties, and sign backroom deals. These power players don't invite you in because they admire you. Cube explained, they invite you to control you. And if you refuse to follow their rules, then the pressure starts. He turned his gaze directly at Diddy, who looked visibly uncomfortable. They stop your meetings. Spread fake news. Make calls behind your back. You don't see it, but you feel it. Cube said he'd witnessed it for years. Artists with real heart brought into this golden circle, offered a taste of fame, and then forced to bow down. Smile. Sign. Obey. If not, your career doesn't just stall, it evaporates. And then Cube dropped the bomb. Diddy wasn't just part of this club. He ran it. Courtroom went still. Jurors leaned closer. The judge looked like he needed a moment to breathe. He even asked, "Would you like a break?" But Cube didn't flinch. He shook his head and looked straight at the jury again. "You want to know why I'm doing this? Because they tried to destroy someone I respect, Jamie Foxx." The entire room reacted. The silence was thick. And this was only the beginning. Celebrities began coming forward. The storm was just getting started. Reporters froze, notebooks half-written. All eyes locked on Cube. He walked them through how it always begins. Smiles, open invites, mysterious calls from people you didn't know had your number. Jamie's rise had been fast, thanks to his undeniable skill, and that's when they locked in on him. "Starts with compliments," Cube said. "Then come the favors. Then it turns into control." He told the court Jamie had shared his fears with him in private, softly, nervously, with caution. "They treat you like your family," Cube said. "But only as long as you follow the rules. And when you don't, the silence speaks louder than words." Cube spoke of exclusive basketball games, unmarked SUVs, strict no-phone policies, strange guests. "It wasn't just basketball," he explained. "It was a test. To see who you'd question and who you'd protect." Jamie stayed respectful. He smiled. He played nice. But he never gave in. That's when the attacks began. Suddenly, he was labeled as difficult. His health was questioned. His name disappeared from casting lists, replaced by tabloid smears. Cube said that 2023 health scare? That wasn't just a medical issue, it was a warning. But he wasn't done. According to Cube, Diddy's circle didn't just throw parties. They documented them. Secret footage. Files. People had no idea they were being recorded. But they were. And once that footage existed, it was kept, used. Cube recalled a chilling call he received from Jamie after one of those events. He didn't say much, but what he did say was haunting. "But I can't unsee it now." And just when the room seemed like it couldn't get any more tense, Cube mentioned another major name, Oprah. "This ain't just about Puffy," he said. "It runs deeper." He revealed that right before Jamie's Oscar moment after Ray, during the height of his fame, he got an unexpected call. It was Oprah, but she wasn't calling to congratulate him. Instead, she told Jamie, "You're messing everything up." Jamie had expected support, maybe encouragement. Instead, she told him to straighten up and said she'd connect him with someone who could guide him. That someone turned out to be Quincy Jones. Cube didn't need to explain who Quincy was. "Everyone in the industry already knows," he said. "Publicly, Quincy's a music icon. But privately, he's someone who carries weight, and not just because of his legacy." Oprah arranged for Jamie to meet Quincy at his house. But it wasn't a party. It wasn't mentorship either. Jamie later told Cube it was one of the most bizarre experiences he'd ever had. "It didn't feel like help," he said. "It felt like grooming. Like he was being conditioned for something larger." Cube said Jamie never gave full details, but the look in his eyes when he tried to describe it, that was all Cube needed. Oprah called it responsibility, Cube said. Quincy called it legacy. But what they handed Jamie that day wasn't guidance, it was control. After that night, Jamie started to act differently. Not because he wanted to, because he had no choice. Cube remembered Jamie saying, "Only way to make it in this business is to fake it." And Cube watched him fake it for years. But today, Cube told the court, nobody's faking anymore. He leaned back, voice calm but firm, and said, "Quincy Jones ain't just a legend. He's a gatekeeper." The whole room fell still. Cube looked right at the judge and added, "This ain't rumor. This is fact. Put it on the record." He spoke of Quincy as someone adored in public but feared in closed circles. "His power," Cube said, "ain't just from his talent, it's from leverage. Secrets. You don't get to that level," Cube continued, "without making deals. And I'm not talking contracts. I'm talking about soul exchanges." Cube explained that Jamie meeting Quincy wasn't a coincidence. It was planned. A handoff, from one overseer to another. Jamie once told him, "Cube, that wasn't advice. That was instruction." Quincy made it look like mentorship, but Jamie saw through it. "It felt like I was being processed," he told Cube. "Not helped, processed." Jamie wasn't the only one. Cube said he'd spoken to other men in the business, gifted, promising men, who suddenly vanished from the public eye, who suffered breakdowns, who re-emerged looking and acting like completely different people. Quincy's charm may have been his disguise, Cube said, but his message was no different from Diddy's. "Obey or you're done." Then, Cube shared something even darker. He said over the years he'd been shown private photos, images passed around in elite circles that were never meant to be seen by outsiders. Quincy was in all of them, always smiling. But the other people? Not smiling at all. Some looked scared. Some looked unaware. Cube told the court, "I can't verify every detail, but I can tell you this. Quincy ain't just a mentor. He's the middleman. And whoever he answers to, we still don't know who they are." Then Cube stood a little taller and looked around the courtroom. "You want to know how they shut people up?" he asked. "It's not just threats, it's blackmail. Diddy's real power," Cube continued, "wasn't just money. It was in what he collected, files, clips, evidence. Years of footage. From hotel rooms, studios, planes, parties. All of it organized. All of it weaponized." Cube looked at the prosecutors and added, "Ask yourselves why so many people stayed silent. How many got flash drives out of nowhere? How many picked up blocked calls and heard audio of stuff they couldn't remember? Ask how many careers disappeared after they said no." And Jamie? He wasn't the only one. Cube said 2 other actors confided in him after attending one of Diddy's events. One of them called in a panic, saying he'd blacked out after midnight and woke up in a hotel suite, with a contract already laid out on the table. For most of his testimony, Cube had been telling stories about others, Jamie, Quincy, and the whole system built to silence. But then he shifted. Now he talked about himself. "I went to one of those parties," he said. "Just once. It was the early 2000s. No official invite. No flyer. Just a call, a time, and a black SUV parked outside his hotel. They called it a networking night, they always do," Cube added. Car took him up into the Hollywood Hills. The mansion was enormous. There were no flashing lights, no booming speakers, only silence cloaked in shadows. This wasn't a party. Felt more like an ambush. Low lighting shrouded the space, muting everything except murmured voices and the occasional shuffle of heavy boots. Security stood like statues in every corner, watching, waiting. No music played. No joy echoed. The mood was unnerving, heavy with unease. And then came the doors, unmarked, some slightly ajar. What was behind them wasn't clear, but Cube heard things. Sounds that didn't fit. Whispers, cries, muffled noises. He didn't want to imagine what was happening behind those thresholds. Familiar celebrities drifted through the rooms, but something about them was off. Their faces were vacant, their expressions lost. Some looked confused. Others looked terrified. Then came the moment he couldn't shake. Cube turned a hallway and found one of his heroes, a legend, sprawled on a couch. Eyes wide, completely expressionless. And facing him, a camera. Recording. Silent. Steady. That was it for Cube. He didn't wait around. No goodbyes. He walked out, got in a car, and rode in silence the entire way home, but it wasn't over. The next day his phone rang. No number. No name. Just a voice. "We saw you leave." That's all they said. No threats. No follow-up. But the message was loud enough. Cube told the jury that night never left him. Shifted his entire view on the business, the people, and the cost of fame. "That wasn't a party," he told them. "It was a setup." Then he faced Diddy calm. "Steady, you didn't just destroy people's lives," Cube said. "You documented it first." The room froze. Even Diddy's lawyer, who had been quick with objections all trial, leaned in and whispered frantically. But Diddy didn't flinch. His skin pale, his jaw clenched. His stare fixed on nothing, because this time the cameras weren't his. This didn't feel like testimony anymore. Felt like confession. Even the defense stopped arguing. There was nothing left to say, but Cube wasn't done. He brought up Jamie Foxx. "They didn't just try to silence him," Cube said. "They tried to erase him." He explained to the jury that Hollywood doesn't threaten you directly. It works in quiet erasure, roles that vanish, meetings that dissolve, relationships that fade. After Jamie started pulling away from Diddy's world, his career shifted. First, the jobs disappeared. Projects halted. Phone calls stopped. Cube brought out a calendar, a record of Jamie's work from 2019 to 2021. On the surface, it looked like a regular slump. But Cube pointed to a pattern. Cancellations all tied to businesses under Bad Boy, Revolt, or Diddy's satellite companies, and then came the rumors, blogs questioning Jamie's sanity. Whisper campaigns. A narrative that he was unstable, unreliable. But Cube pushed back. He wasn't breaking down, Cube said. He was breaking free. And they didn't like that. Then came Jamie's sudden health crisis. Cube lowered his voice. "Tell me how a man in top shape collapses right after trying to speak out?" He didn't accuse. But his meaning was clear. "I know what fear feels like," he said. And that wasn't just a medical incident. That was a warning. According to Cube, Jamie had been offered second chances, projects, appearances, deals. All he had to do was pretend. Smile. Say nothing. But he refused, and that's when it got darker. They tried to replace him, Cube said. That's where the clone talk started. Fans noticed the change. Photos looked different. His public presence vanished. Cube didn't say it was conspiracy. He called it a strategy. They break you down until even your supporters don't recognize you anymore. That's how they keep power, he said. Not just through fear, but by erasing people. Then Cube turned his body toward the jury, his expression sharpening. This isn't about the music, he declared. It's not even about the parties. It's about control. He scanned the faces of every juror, locking eyes before glancing at the prosecutors. They don't just influence what we hear. They shape what we believe, what we fear, who we obey. Hollywood, he explained, wasn't merely entertainment. It was a machine, one carefully designed to steal real pain, real identity, and recycle it as scripted content. You think it's freedom? He asked. Nah, it's programmed. Every album, every blockbuster, every artist they push, it's all engineered. Then he dropped the line that sent a chill through the room. The same folks promoting prison music, Cube said. They own the prisons. He paused. That's what Tupac was trying to expose. Before they shut him up. Before he got too political. Before he started calling out the ones hiding behind the curtain. Suddenly, this wasn't just a court hearing. It was an exposure of an entire machine unraveling from the inside out. Cube didn't hold back. He revealed to the jury that those infamous parties everyone whispered about, those weren't social events. They were evaluations, he said. They weren't for fun, they were setups. He explained how Diddy's gatherings worked like covert tryouts. If you went along with everything, you were protected. If you pushed back, you got targeted. They were watching, Cube said. Recording. Testing who obeyed and who resisted. He shared a story about a young female artist, a singer on the rise. She had talent, buzz, potential. But she declined an invitation to one of those events. She refused to sign with Bad Boy. Soon after, everything changed. The media painted her as difficult. Rumors spread. Award shows left her off the list. Her label dropped her and no one returned her calls. Cube stopped and looked at the jury. You think that just happened? He asked. No, it didn't. That was retaliation. Then he delivered a line that froze the entire courtroom. I kept trying to figure out what Diddy did, he said. But the real question is, how many people helped him do it? With those words, the focus of the trial shifted. It wasn't just about Diddy anymore. It was about the whole web of silence. Everyone who turned away. Everyone who protected it. Everyone who kept it running. The judge leaned back in silence. The gallery was still. Even the prosecution looked shaken. This wasn't a celebrity scandal anymore. It was a collapse of a system built on fear and silence. The judge asked if Cube had anything else to say. Without hesitation, he stood, walked slowly to the center of the courtroom, not for drama but with purpose. He looked straight at Diddy and said, You built an empire on silence. You called it winning. But it was really enslavement. Diddy didn't react. He just stared ahead, stone-faced. But Cube wasn't done. You didn't just throw parties, he continued. You built psychological prisons. You locked people inside illusions, celebrations that were really surveillance. You controlled them, used them, broke them. His voice never shook, grew firmer with every sentence. You shattered people. Then you documented it. You made a record of their worst moments and kept it. He turned from Diddy to face the courtroom gallery. To every artist watching this, to every kid dreaming of stardom, understand this. Before they hand you your dream, they'll ask for something back. Your voice. Your pride. Sometimes your whole soul. Cube's eyes swept across the room. By the time you realize what you've surrendered, it's already gone. Then he paused. What came next stunned everyone. I was scared, he said quietly. The room went completely still. I was scared, he repeated. Because I knew what I'd seen. What I'd heard. What I'd almost stepped into. And I kept quiet, thinking if I didn't say anything, I'd stay safe. He turned to the jury. But silence doesn't protect you. Just delays the fallout. Silence makes you part of it. Then Cube reached into his folder and pulled out a single photo. This was me, he said. Back in '91. Eyes full of hope. Thought I could make a difference. Thought I could create without being broken. He stared at the photo for a beat, then held it up. That version of me, he said, he didn't survive. And then he tore it clean in half. But the version standing here today, the one testifying, he's not scared of any of you. The room was dead quiet. Not a single objection came. The reporters had stopped typing. The jury wasn't even blinking. It didn't feel like court anymore. It felt like a burial for the silence that once held the system together. Cube walked back to the witness stand, gently placed the torn photo on top of his folder, and looked at the judge. I don't know what you'll do with this, he said. But now you can't pretend you didn't hear it. Now you all know. Then he turned to Diddy one last time. You thought no one would speak. You thought we'd all stay buried. But silence is over. That door you locked, it's wide open now. He stepped off the stand without acknowledging the press or the jury. He walked down the aisle like a man who had unloaded decades of truth. And right before reaching the courtroom exit, he turned slightly and said, They didn't kill Jamie. They didn't kill me. They just made us louder. And with that, IceCube was gone. But what he left behind wasn't just words. It was a reckoning, and the beginning of a storm no one would ever forget.